take that into account. You can email it in or something. Just throw it an email or give a letter to the board. And that's great news. All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. We have an agenda that was sent out. The main thing is we're just going to follow the usual order that we do for the various board meetings. We'll call to order. You get a devotion from me, which I know you've all missed. Then we're going to look over the agenda. We're going to have a treasurer's report. Then we're going to do the elders report. We're going to do various committees are going to come up and give you their report for the year, as well as I'm going to have some closing statements. But before that, we're going to consider whether or not we want to extend voting for another 2 weeks, given the joys of COVID-19 and shelter-in-place orders. And then we can adjourn. And in coming to today, I didn't think that we'd have 3 months of not seeing each other, which for most of you, I missed you. But when it came to a meeting, it's very important, and I will be honest that I am, even with our meager crowd of about 94 total, and seeing the place empty before we start is disheartening to me and disappointing. And so it's very important when we come together to do business, it's also for ministry. It's not just dollars, but it's how we do and what we do for the kingdom. Paul wrote to the church in Philippi about joy. In the 2nd chapter, he says, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. And it's at this time each year that we as a church gather, not only to worship, not only to express our faith, but to say how we as a church, not individuals, are expressing that faith. To say what we're doing to take that heart, to take that soul, and take it to our steps, through our hands. Will you please bow with me? Dear Lord, I thank you for us being able to gather here this morning as a church and not only sing songs or listen to Ronnie or partake in communion, but to review what we as a body have done, what we plan to do, and what's in the works to be done. Not for ourselves, not for the building, but for each other, for your kingdom, for you. In Christ's name, amen. So I listed out the agenda before. I assume it's by consensus approved. I see no objection to that unless there's anything in the YouTube comments. And now I'm going to allow Christina, come on down. You get to speak. Mr. Michael Berg was not able to be here, and so Christina's covering for him.
Eric, was this on the PowerPoint? Never mind. All right. I'm Berg's proxy, so today. And the treasurer's report, there's good news. That is awesome to be able to report. So over for the 2019-2020 fiscal year, the total budgeted amount was $297,528. The average needed per month to be brought in to meet that budget was $24,794. Our total giving through May of this year was $277,283. The monthly average was $25,207. So it was greater than what we needed per month. So that's been, and so overall that ended up being $413 above what was needed to meet our budget, and almost $4,500 above the total. So that is fantastic, but it didn't look that way throughout the entire year. And there was some concern with this. So for the first 8 months of the year, from last July to February, we met the monthly budget 0 times and were $15,000 under budget. But, yay God, the next 3 months, from March through May, exceeded the monthly budget each month and were $20,000 over budget. And so that ended up being a total of the $4,600 over the budget, above the budget at that point. The spending, the total amount spent through May of 2020 was $256,000, and so the difference was $21,000. Our proposed budget for the next year is very, very similar to the last one. I think maybe even $500 less, $297,000. The monthly need is $24,753. The goals for this next fiscal year is to meet the budget on a consistent monthly basis and to once again raise the missions giving to 10% of the budget. Our 2019-2020 missions giving was just over $17,000, and it was 5.75% of the budget. And we would like to be able to raise that once again up to the 10%. But God has been so good, so good. Thank you. Yeah.
And as long as we meet those goals, another thing is we want to look at is potentially restoring minister's salary as well, because that was a thing that we had to cut to make budget before. So just things to think about. The other thing is if we do make budget, I will still give financial updates, but I won't be as nasty about it. Now we're going to move on to staff reports. We're going to have Ronnie, the senior minister, if he's here. Otherwise, okay. I was looking for an older guy in a suit, which I shouldn't expect here.
Yeah, I wore this shirt today especially because it was our first time back. So I appreciate all the comments about shirt wearing. Anyway, just a couple of things I want to share that I think was special about this year. And not that we haven't done this before, but I've sat down with Matthew and Eric in kind of prolonged look and at sermons. And so these guys have been really valuable in and actually creating some of the series that we've gone through has been the mixture of the three of us getting together and say, man, what is it that the congregation needs to hear? You know, where's a good direction to go? Eric has been really instrumental at putting especially the slides together. Matthew, I don't know what he does, but no, he's been the three of us together working and said I mean, for years it's been, Ronnie, what are we going to be preaching? And I'll sit down. I tried, looking at a group together thinking, but the three of us, I want to do more of that this year. So that's kind of a look forward. And that's number one. Number two, I wanted to say is this really on my heart. We're thinking I am 60 years old now, and so some years ahead. Who knows how long I have? I put a question mark by that. I do want to be talking to leadership about that, and I do want to be purposeful. I think the leadership ought to be purposeful about a transition. Who's going to take place? What are we going to look like past the time when Ronnie's here? And one of the things that kept hitting me in the head that I would really want to, I think I'm being drawn to do more of, is working more shoulder to shoulder with our leadership. And so immediately begin to put that into place. I've already had conversations with those that have been mentioned for deacon, deaconess. That's already been in place, as we approach this. It means, I'm not talking about classes, I'm not talking about all kinds of things, but being more purposeful in sitting down and having conversations with those who are in leadership. I think in part is the responsibility making sure that they're grounded and set upon what's most important. Their relationship with Christ is growing. That they're involved in prayer. Are they involved in Scripture? And so those are the things that I want to help them. Not come in and say, grading or anything like that, but let's find out where you are. Tell me what do you think, or what direction you want to take in growing. And just having just some real open conversations with elders in that, with deacons and deaconesses, and also with the potential deacons, deaconesses, and elders of the future. And so I want to make sure that each month that it's going to be phone contacts, maybe lunches here and there. You see, there's kind of is that selfish? No, I don't know. But to maybe even have them come over. Linda loves the hosting, and so maybe we could have more elders and deacons and deaconesses coming into our home and sharing together. So in the 5 years, I want to see the people that are stepping up, these people that you've prayed, I want to definitely see and be a part of them growing and being strengthened and being enabled through prayer and through constant Scripture reading and involvement in their service in the church. I want to be the encourager and the prayer and the one that's there for them. I think that would be actually something that's really good with my time. That's all I have. All right, so pray for me.
I guess I'm being presumptive here. So they say technology is only as smart as the person using it, and it has failed me today. I put together some thoughts into a Word document, all organized, and failed to print it this week, so it's at home on my computer. So I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I apologize if I forget something. I'll try to be concise. In June, end of June, beginning of July, this will be the end of 12 years that my family and I have spent in ministry here and as a part of this community. And I just want to recommunicate how blessed we feel for those years and how much we look forward to the time that will come. You guys as a church body have been so supportive and have been such a blessing to serve, and so I thank you all for that. Matt and I were talking this morning, and in kind of preparing for this, it almost feels like you're reporting on 2 different years, with the dramatic changes in the world around us that happened starting, I guess, for us around March. Thinking back to some of the things that happened in September and November and even December, some of those things almost seem trivial, but there were a few things when it came to worship ministry that we had been working to make some changes on. We had been spending a lot of work with Matt and Chris and Kevin as far as getting sermon videos put up on YouTube, which turned out to be great preparation for some things. We made some changes to the stage. We made some changes to the service order. All of that stuff seems pretty trivial at the moment. The big things that happened, and I very much believe God was involved in some of these things. For one, like I said, some of the work that we had done with YouTube prior to this really set us up for the circumstances that we faced in March when it came to getting set up and prepared and doing worship online well. I am very thankful for the things that God put in place to have us ready to do that. The other really big thing is we were contacted by an organization called PushPay that wanted to, they're a service, so they of course wanted us to pay them, but they wanted to help us with our online giving, and they also offered to build us an application, a mobile app to go with that. And that turned out to be a godsend, again, with the way that things changed and how we gathered or didn't gather, and the faithfulness of you all with your giving through that PushPay platform. There seems to be a correlation there between that and that increase in giving that Christina reported about. I don't know that wouldn't have happened anyway, but that definitely seemed to be something else that God used to really bring us through some unforeseen times. And as far as the application goes, we're extremely close to launching that. Honestly, we probably could have launched it a couple weeks ago had my schedule allowed me to address a few things differently. So keep an eye on for some announcements with that. There's a lot of things that are available with that will hopefully help us to be able to communicate with you all better. That's obviously one thing that through all of this that just keeps coming up. We can always communicate better. And then lastly, I have been challenged personally through not only the last several months, but through some things that are reading and whatever. And I really appreciated something that Ronnie said earlier, kind of emphasized this idea. It's not about location anymore, was his quote. But just challenging the constructs of what church has come to look like. Not that any of the things that we have come to value when it comes to our time of worship are inherently wrong, but that sometimes we allow those things to become more important than they ought to be. And at that point, they become a distraction rather than an aid to our ability to give God the honor that he deserves. And as a worship leader, I've been challenged to hopefully challenge all of you with those concepts that, when we make plans and when we put things together, that we make sure we're doing those in an intentional way that leads us to better honor God and spread his word to the world around us, rather than focusing on those elements or those traditions or those tasks, that those things don't become the end, they become a means to the end, which is obviously giving God the glory that he deserves. So just to prepare you all, there are probably more changes coming from my end, because I feel strongly that I'm prompted to act on some of these thoughts. But that's been a challenge for me, which unfortunately means that becomes a challenge for you all. But anyway, those are kind of the things. I'm probably forgetting something. The other thing that I always want to communicate is that if you have any questions for me, or if you have frustrations or disappointments, I would love to speak with you about those things. I know that I'm not a perfect man. I know that I make choices that frustrate people, and I know that I don't always communicate as well as I can. So my door and my phone are always available to you to have conversations, to hear your feedback, to serve you as best I can. So I look forward again to what God has in store for me personally as a leader, but also for this body going forward, and I look forward to being there with you all in that. So thank you guys for your faithfulness.
I've been running the computer, so there's like 14 people watching right now, so that's kind of nice to have that option available. As I prepared for, which I will say, Bill is watching, and he's already complaining about not being able to hear. So he says, get closer to the mic, Eric. Sorry. Yeah, I know. I tried to turn it up, but I think he just might be old. So, got you, Bill. But what I said to Eric when I walked in this morning was, I can barely remember what happened before 3.5 months ago. We got so dialed into, putting out Wednesday videos, helping with the streaming, all of the stuff that went along with that, getting things prepared, even in here. It's been an interesting ride, but I appreciate the staff that I work with, and I was reminded about that this week, that there are a lot of churches that people not just attend, but people work in my position, and they get burned very badly, and they end up burning out and leaving ministry altogether. And I found this out through a conversation with my youth pastor, the guy that I came to know Jesus under when I was 17, who was at a very large church. And when I say large, I mean huge church in Colorado. And it was hard to hear him talk about being burned and resigning from that position. But at the same time, it made me thankful for the church that I work in. So I want to make sure I say that too and echo some of the things that Eric said too. It has been a blessing to be a part of this leadership from a board standpoint, from an eldership standpoint, from a staff standpoint. So we are different than a lot of other churches in not just in what you see here, but what happens behind the scenes. So this last year with the youth group, there's been a lot of things that have been kind of a bummer, to be honest with you. So with the high school closing down outside lunches, there's no more BLT program. So one of our biggest opportunities for FaceTime with students, high schoolers in particular, where they were coming in and being fed, is now gone. So that's like a 25-year program that had to come to an end, which was frustrating, but we have to figure out a different way to minister and to reach our high school students. And one of the things that, after meeting with Ty Zimmerman from FCA, who has strong ties to this high school, a couple of the youth pastors are going to be looking at different very part-time coaching positions at the high school in order to try to have more FaceTime with, or middle school, to have more FaceTime with students. That's something I'm looking forward to. I can't this year. I've talked to my wife, and the fall is kind of booked with a new addition on the way. So between that and then making sure that I'm keeping on top of things here, I want to make sure that I'm being faithful in all the different areas I'm already a part of. Another thing is, this last year was our second year every first week of the month meeting with JC Nass. This year FCA became a big part of that, and we put on a few different events with them. Our kickoff was really, really solid, and we had a few good events throughout the year. But after kind of evaluating that and some of the feedback that we've gotten from students that were involved with it, as well as other ministers that have been involved with it, I think we're going to end that as a normal first week of the month and try to go to a quarterly event. And this is just to try to do more of an event and then focus on the social aspect of ministry throughout the weeks, as opposed to event-type ministry. So we're excited about that. And then with that, this last year, and I know John will probably talk about this, but we did the survey that talked about just to try to get a handle on vision stuff, but there was actually some really good feedback for the youth ministry kind of woven throughout those answers. And honestly, I have evaluated those, I have taken notes on those, and I'm looking forward to implementing some new things as a result of that. Looking to this year, I really want to focus on student leadership development as well as adult leadership development, as well as personal development. So the reason that I was talking to my former youth pastor is because he is now with a nonprofit called Lead 222, which is a coaching program for youth ministers to be able to have mentorship. And so he's going to mentor me throughout this next year, help me achieve goals that I want to achieve, but then also just honestly help me have a little bit of an extra set of eyes and give me a little bit of help in some of the areas I feel very deficient in. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm excited about it. And we spoke for a good hour the other day, 45 minutes to an hour, just kind of priming that pump and figuring out what that might begin to look like. But I want to do a better job this year. I'm looking forward to some of the goals that I have set in my head. They're a little bit general, so I need to flesh those out and make them more specific. I think that's all that I have. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Hi, everybody. My wife usually comments that people don't have too much trouble hearing me talk when I get up here in front of the microphone. Is everybody hearing me all right? Bill? Out there in TV land, can you hear me? Or should I say mobile phone land, wherever you're tuning in from. First of all, wow. I mean, comments by everyone so far, ministers in particular, how blessed they are to be in this body and how blessed we are to have them. And yeah, definite amen on that. They have really talked through a lot of the talking points that I have because as elders, we essentially are tuned in to just about everything that goes on here in the church, which is a good thing. We do, as Eric said, tend to have some communication gaps once in a while, but otherwise, we try to be tuned in, plugged in to what's going on, what's happening, and give some feedback on that and offer opinions and recommendations. As Ronnie stated, one of the objectives that we would like to move into in the coming year is definitely this key on developing leadership, deacon, deaconesses, and elders. And I know Britton also is definitely on board with that. So as a leadership group, having people, identifying people that may be interested, having conversations with them, seeing where they're at in their walk with Christ, and coming to, trying to just determine who might be the potential leaders going forward. As Ronnie said, he's 60, I'm 57. Gotcha, bud. Although there's some days I feel like I'm 68, but anyway. That's one of the things that we're going to try to get to have some conversations on moving forward this year. And don't be surprised if you get a phone call or a text or something and say, "Hey, let's have a conversation about this and see where you're at." One of the things this last year that I feel really good about, that as an eldership, is that we have done the work scripturally and done the work personally to come to a place where when we have an elder meeting, we can express our opinions, although they may be opposing one another, and we can work through that without conflict. That hasn't always been the case, so we feel like we've come together spiritually in that way so that we can work through those things. I would also comment that the board also has made an improvement in areas where when we have discussions and we have opposing viewpoints, that they are handled with grace and dignity and honesty, and that's just a good feeling to know that you can come to a meeting, express yourself, and even if you are in an opposing viewpoint, not be harassed or harangued or made to feel bad about it. So this is just we have a good community here, and we're going to be looking at ways that we can improve it, which henceforth the vision casting, which has been going on for, checking back through my notes, I believe we started that in 2018 sometime, this process where we dive deep on, what is the personality and the uniqueness of our church, what gifts that do we have, and it took, honestly, 2 or 3 months of meetings just to get the elders to come to an understanding of what we were actually trying to achieve, because we were like, we're go-getters. Okay, well, let's just go do something, Let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And we were kind of missing the point there for a little bit, but the young ministers and Ronnie hung in there and herded us in the right direction. So we began to have a little more positive conversations about, what is the personality of First Christian Church? What are our strengths? And then to promote what we also like to do and look forward to is really what we want to do is raise this body's visibility in our community in service to this community. So what does that look like? How are we involved with our schools? How are we involved, with various organizations in our community that need help, like Open Door and any of the others which escape me right now, sorry. But so these are the things that as an eldership we look at and then, offer up, recommendations and opinions to which anything that we decide primarily has to have board approval. So I sometimes forget that and approach it in a different way, but Britton always reels me in. So, so with that, also we've had some pretty other discussions, relevant to things going on in church, and spiritual issues like false teaching that is pretty prevalent throughout the world now. Different forums, different leaders putting it out there. And for us, it's a matter of, talking about ways to make the congregation aware of these folks and how they can, just check what anybody is saying against what the scriptures have to say about it. And that's the bottom line. That's how you know. The other thing we had we had a deep discussion on women's role in church, and again, you know, we look to the scriptures to define this for us and to talk about it. And we don't have any profound things to put out there today, but that will probably continue to be an ongoing discussion. And again, this is about how do we meet the needs of our congregation through people that God has called to be leaders in this church, and how do we identify them and nurture them and encourage them. So ongoing discussions there. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of this church as well. I'll just say that. Coming to Christ was the biggest decision in my life, and so glad I made it, and I'm happy to be here, and just pray that you guys, that I can serve you as well as I can. Thank you.
And now we're going to move on to the various missions and team reports that we have here. So we have a number of different groups that get together and made up mainly of us as congregants to make things happen, to take on the various aspects of the church. So we're going to start with our missions team. Roxy?
Steve Messick is the chair this year, but he was unable to be here today, so I'm taking over for him. The missions team purpose is to really keep in mind and to communicate with our missions and who we support each month. We also do have an emphasis on our local missions, which is the Open Door, Food Pantry, and the JC Pregnancy Center, which we also try to support. Faith Promise is something that's unique to this congregation. You've heard about our budget from the Treasurer's Report, but Faith Promise is also an option for giving, and all of that money goes towards missions. It's split evenly between those that we do choose to support monthly. So if you want to give just to missions, you can make that donation on your check or on the online giving. And the three major things that we did want to celebrate from this past year: Phil McAfee was with us for several months, back from September through November, and we housed him here, and we're his sponsor for this time. And we really enjoyed Phil and Tabitha, and then if you got to know him, you got to meet Lais, their little 2-year-old granddaughter, who was quite fun. Then we also had a visit from Megan Smith, who most of you know was with, or still is with Wycliffe. And she had been in Ethiopia, but due to health problems, she's now back in Dallas. So we had her here 1 week that we got to visit with her and learn about her upcoming job with Wycliffe. And then also we added 2 more members to our mission team, Carol and Steve Lacer. And we're very glad to have them on board. Thank you.
Jan, if you want to come up and talk about care and compassion.
I think I'll be able to hear you. How's that? Okay. Well, you know, I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I talk softly because I taught my kindergartners to say, listen closely because you might forget something. So they became good listeners. So congregation, become good listeners because I don't talk very loud. What I wanted to say this morning was I wanted to tell you about Care and Compassion Team, but Ronnie said I could only talk for a little bit. So I'm only going to give you the facts. Care and Compassion Team is a wonderful ministry that we have, and I'm one of the 7 members of the Care and Compassion Team. We serve not only our congregation, but we serve outside of our congregation. Even across the water, we send a lot of cards. I looked at our printout sheet that we give our board members every month, and I think we send out between 30 and 35 cards a month, depending on the month, of course. We send to people who are in our nursing homes, and they love them because sometimes they respond back to us and tell us how much they enjoyed it, that we didn't forget them. And I'm going to speak of one, and that's Dorothy Lutman, who moved to where'd she go? Wichita. And she always responds back and says, you didn't forget me. So we write a little personal note on a thinking of you cards. We send out birthday cards to our older people. We also send out sympathy cards, and we make phone calls. We do a lot of praying for each other and a lot of praying for our congregation and our ministers. This kind of consists of what we do in the Care and Compassion team. Also, our Care and Compassion team has a lot of talent that God has given these girls, and they use it greatly. So remember, when you go to prayer, remember the Care and Compassion team, because we do a lot of good for our people and for the people that surround our church. Thank you for letting me say this. And now I have to go home and take care of Bill because he's not doing well. Thank you.
Now we have the Christian education team.
All right, I'm starting my timer so that I don't ever have much to say, but somehow I always go over. Okay, so I represent our Christian education team, or we've even toyed with changing it to children's education team because we focus on our children's classes Wednesday night and Sunday morning programming for our children. So, man, this has been an interesting year. It's actually been a very full year of, different, new things that we've tried. Even with our COVID delay, we've had a lot of different changes. One of the things that we altered by request of, I think it was Megan Woods who kind of brought it up, the idea of having our 3 through 5 year olds join service during worship time. With our family, or our church being so focused on family time, it just seemed like such a great idea to get our toddlers in here to enjoy worship and then send them back to class. And man, we've had really great response from many of our families that they enjoy that time with their kids in here. It's a time that the kids are engaged, and then they get to go enjoy their class time with their teachers. And it's kind of a wonderful benefit to our teachers as well, who that's a huge class, and it's been a great benefit to give them some time in here with worship and then send them back with, anyway, yeah, it's been a great change. So to my understanding, we'll carry that on unless we see any other major issues with that change. So this last year, oh goodness, I honestly don't remember the month of our volunteer appreciation gathering, but we had a volunteer appreciation event hosted by our Christian education team, just to thank not only our teachers, but our just any volunteer of any capacity, throughout the church. And that was a really great event. We had it catered, and it, enjoyed some fun games, enjoyed conversation with each other, and we actually had a couple other events planned during the time of our quarantining. There was some training and some just teacher appreciation time planned that we weren't able to enjoy, but look forward to rescheduling those things for months to come, because we very much appreciate our teachers and are in need of, ongoing need. I think that will always be a need for us, as new teachers stepping in to give other teachers a break from serving. So we had the opportunity to discuss, I think this is kind of an ongoing thing for us as well, just looking at our curriculum, and especially we use Orange Curriculum, which is the children's curriculum for both pre-K and elementary age classes. We have evaluated it a handful of times over the course of, I'd say it's been about 5 years or so that we've been using that material. It's been a quality material for us to use, and we've even seen some growth in that material, honestly, excellent growth in its emphasis on the gospel. That's always our priority, is to see that our curriculum is, one, user-friendly, but that it's gospel-driven. And we haven't always seen, I hope this is not an offensive thing for me to say, that we haven't always seen such a strong emphasis of the gospel. And the early, year or two that we've used it, it's always been user-friendly. But anyway, it is we are constantly evaluating it, and we actually have our elders with, they've got material in hand, and they're going to continue to do some evaluating for us as well. We want to be very diligent to use only gospel-driven material in our classrooms. So Orange curriculum, though, we are carrying on with for the time being, unless we find something that's not pleasing to the Lord. I would say just briefly, we had a couple of members, Megan Woods and, Megan Gefeller, step forward at the start of last year and just expressed a desire to see a greater handle on our special education individuals. That we've got a couple of sweet young people in our congregation who needed a little extra attention in our classrooms, and they expressed a desire to serve in that manner. So we have a little man, Chase Gefeller, who has been aided by both Megan Gefeller and Megan Woods, and then there's might be another individual or two who have lent a hand there, and he's been able to benefit. Overtime. I'm going to wrap up. But he's been able to participate well in class, and that's been such a wonderful thing, and we look forward to seeing that continue to expand. Our need for special education is there, and we want that to continue to grow. One other, so our board, or our team is made up of, I think it's 5 of us or 6 of us anyway. Bridget Von Sparkelson has been a part of that team for a good number of years and has served in children's ministry for a long time, and her heart is for the church completely. It's just her girls are getting older now, and her perspective and desire to serve is very much there, but we're looking to, so Bridge has taken a break. Actually, she's just stepping away from the Christian education team altogether, but we're very thankful for the time that she has spent serving in the classroom and in helping us plan what our children's education looks like. But she will be looking more towards outreach and maybe just adult kind of things. So any questions? Anything that I missed, Matt Johnson? No? All right. I think that covers everything. Thank you.
Connect and fellowship, which may have been covered mostly already, but we want to make sure everything's covered.
So I am the kind of leader by default of our Connect team. I do see the irony in that. If you know me well, you know I'm not a social butterfly, so it is kind of an ironic position to hold. I am really thankful for, it's ladies, I'll just be honest with you, that serve along with me in that group. It's been kind of a struggle the last few months because so much of what we as a team try to do has to do with bringing people together physically, not just spiritually. And so we have had some interaction, from a distance about things we might be able to do, but it has been a challenge. Some of the things we typically do are, Super Bowl party. We have planned some gatherings outdoors. Typically what we do is plan gatherings. I'm sure there's some other things that we could do and potentially do better. The one thing I always say at this meeting is if you are led to serve in that way, we would love to have you. We added a couple of members. I don't remember if it was this year or last year, but we are always happy to have more, and I will ask if you want to lead it if you choose to join. So just know that ahead of time. Anyway, like I said, I appreciate it. And we are also open to ideas. So if you have an idea for a way that we might help the body connect better, bring it to us. We will probably ask for your help. So anyway, that's what we do, and that is our goal. And I don't really have a whole lot else to report from that perspective. So.
Building and grounds? And this was a particular team or committee that we can always use more volunteers on, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things we're looking at is organizing the group more so this year, right?
Organization is not my strong suit, so yeah, I've definitely failed in that regard. But how was I gonna start? So, oh, I need to get closer. Sorry. Is this better? So I'm gonna list a few things. I don't wanna step on John's toes. John's gonna do some of the renovation, whatever plans or renovation team report. And obviously there's been some big changes in the church, but that kind of has to do with that instead. But like the flooring's been installed. That was something that was part of the renovation budget. And then we had some volunteer. We actually had enough money to pay for that, to have it installed, so it actually happened fairly quickly. And then I want to thank, we have so many volunteers that just kind of step up, and even when there's nobody in the church, we still had people come in and do some works, like John and my dad and Bridget was here, and had a couple other guys that work for me and work for John. We're here to work as well, putting a baseboard down and that kind of thing. So that's looking, if you haven't walked through that area, obviously you shouldn't right now, but I'm not condoning it, but when you see it, you'll be impressed. It looks a lot better, it looks a lot cleaner, a lot easier to keep clean. Another thing inside the church, we just something recently, we had our grease trap inspection. We passed that. It's kind of a smelly day because you have to open that thing up, but we passed that with flying colors. Another thing we're doing inside the church, haven't done a whole lot in the last couple of months, but we're slowly swapping out light bulbs, which may seem kind of menial to you guys, but we are going from lights that have ballast in them to ballast bypass lights. That means that someone, hey, you see a light bulb out, you should be able to go just change it yourself. If you don't know what a ballast is, then you should still be able to change a light bulb. So if you don't know, don't try to change one right now because you'll get in trouble. So some things outside we got going on. I don't know if you saw that we were sort of developing our own swamp out front, and that's gone. Thank you, Brian, for taking charge of that. He kind of dug it out in order for the city to kind of see what the issue was, and that it wasn't our issue, it was something else. So he kind of pushed them in that direction. They ended up fixing it. So obviously it's a little bit, it's kind of just dirt out there right now, but obviously that'll come back. So thanks for doing that, Brian. We have some trees that we're gonna have to probably just take out. It kind of stinks. We have a nice little windbreak privacy tree line right over here, but some of them are dead or dying, and so we're going to have to organize a day sometime soon to take those out. So be on the lookout for that. We'll try to not schedule it on the hottest day of the summer, or maybe we'll just wait. But we'll kind of evaluate that as it comes. But that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Chris Hallenbach with Safety and Security.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last year for the safety committee, we had about 4 people, and the good thing is this year we're up to 6 people, so that's a plus. What we've covered over the last year is every February, January timeframe, we sit down, we kind of assess what the hazard assessment for the church. So we updated our policy letter for the group, added in some changes to that. We updated the overall plan. The purpose of that was try to incorporate a little more into the safety, our subgroups such as the Welcome Center, readers, incorporate those folks into the plan and get a little more engagement there. So we added that in and updated that. And the last thing we did was update our threats and hazards matrix. And the way we do that is we work with data from different agencies, mainly dealing with those 3 areas. And then the last one is the National Weather Service, where you look at the historical weather within our area. And then we take all of that and we apply that as a threat or a hazard to our facility and also to our personnel here. So we completed that. We spent one night just doing that collectively as a group, reading through all the data, sorting it through. So that gave us the way forward to go and continue with our assessments of the safety areas. So what we finished up with was the nursery and the children's area. That was probably about a 3-4 month project on that. But we took that data, the photos of what we found there, we documented in a written report and gave it to the board. And then what we found there was one of the main things that kind of was concerning with us was first aid, on the medical side was first aid kits. Either the first aid kits did not exist or the stuff in them was pretty dry rotted or empty. So we went to the board and got the authorization, and you should see several new first aid kits around the building. We put those up thanks to Jared and Brian. That was completed in a good location and just out of reach of children. But with that also is we took the main first aid kit, which is a big, large, white first aid kit, industrial size, and we refilled that. And what we also did was put 6 Stop the Bleed trauma kits into that. And that will be maintained in the church office, and it'll also be mounted. So that's what we did over that last period up until the pandemic started, and then we came to almost to a halt. Just as about everything did. So looking forward, what is planned with the committee is to go forward with the youth and the family side of the safety assessment, and that's dealing more on the upper level, like it says, the youth stuff there. And then we'll shift our focus into building security and into the medical response side, looking at the medical stuff. So once things kind of, with the group, the committee come back together, then that's where we'll move forward with that. This will also be my last report. I am stepping down as the committee chief. So going forward with that, there'll be a new person up here next year briefing everybody. So, but thanks a lot for those that have helped out and the support they've gave to the committee, though. Appreciate that.
Hello, it's me again. Because Eric has so many things going on, it was decided that I would speak for the building committee, the renovation committee, rather. Sorry. I don't want to step on your toes, Jared, because he's liable to whoop me. And he can do it pretty handily. Just a couple of things real quick. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't also express a great gratitude from on behalf of the elders to all of our volunteers for those folks that give up their time and their talents to benefit this church body. So, Bridget, you've been called out today, and I'll just say, yeah, big thank you for all that you've done. And I know there are many others, Brian Clark, and if I go down the list, I'll be up here way longer, and Britton and Ronnie will both be mad at me. So, another thing, too, also a great thank you to Chris for his efforts with regards to the safety and security team. I mean, we essentially had zilch in that neighborhood until Chris took it on and just exceeded anything I might have imagined with that. Did an excellent job, and I know he's prepared his team well, and I'm sure one of those good folks is going to step up and take charge of that and carry it forward and continue to do great works for us in that regard. He's also not returning as elder in this upcoming year, and I'm definitely disappointed in that because I appreciate his feedback and his input, but I can understand, this is kind of points to and something Matt said to comment on, this burnout that you encounter sometimes. Not saying that Chris is burnt out, just saying that we tend to recycle a lot of folks in this church, with regards to elders and deacons and deaconesses and volunteers and so forth. And this emphasis that you're seeing on leadership or identifying leadership and is just another way for us to try to enlarge that pool of folks so that we don't run the risk of burning folks out and sending them off, just down on serving because we've taken all the service out of them. So now, speaking about the renovation plan, yes, earlier in the year we got to the number relevant to phase 1 where, we were talked about a certain amount of dollars being collected in order to trigger that through the congregation's contributions, and then what the church would be committed to adding to that. We decided that phase 1 would be triggered with board approval, and so just a reminder, phase 1 was hallway activity center, kitchen flooring. That's been completed with the exception of some baseboard in some areas. New north entrance, which basically is a new entry point from that parking lot there just inside the activity center past the kitchen. We do have been in meetings with architectural services, and through code enforcement and whatnot. That particular overhang is no issue for us, so we could proceed with that at any point we decide to. The west overhang is a little bit different situation, which was also in phase one. We have what they call separation between buildings that we need to define, because if we attach that overhang to the building, then we'd be required to sprinkle it, and that would just up our costs considerably. So right now, working with the architect, trying to ascertain from code enforcement just exactly how much separation we need, and is there any value in using different choices in building materials to have a closer, separations, things like that. So ongoing conversations with the architect services in that regard. A little bit of a snag in phase one with regards to what we have listed here and posted for that. Our projector lens is slowly but surely going by the way, and so we may need to delay parts of phase one in order to bring this particular item up to the focus, so that we might need to replace that projector as a whole, which would be a pretty significant cost. So that's part of the consideration in the building. Sorry, I keep saying building grounds, but it's the renovation team. Ongoing talks to see where we're going to go with that. And then looking down the road, it's been suggested that we'll just keep this committee together and maybe start to do some long-range planning. We may roll that in with building and grounds as well. That hasn't been decided officially, but it's just some talks that we wouldn't say we've been caught a little off guard with the renovations or whatnot, but we weren't focused as a community here on what we would do with our building or make a plan, and so we're reacting to some things. So in the future, we'd like to be more purposeful about that and more prepared, and so we may roll these two groups together, or give building and grounds another task to add to theirs, which would be forecast and planning on future upgrades and or replacements and so on and so forth. And that's all I got to say about that. Any questions? Oh, Eric's going to add because I didn't get it. Sorry.
It has been some time since we launched this campaign, so I think most of you in the building here were aware of that, but maybe some of you that are watching online haven't been. So we again acknowledge we haven't communicated as well on that. If you would like to know details about that, I do have the original letter on file, or if you want to continue to contribute to that, there's multiple ways you can make a memo. There is a separate fund on our digital giving platform, so feels like we're asking for money all the time. I apologize for that. But if you would like to know more about what the plan with that was, please reach out to one of us that's on the building committee. We'd love to talk to you about it.
I just wrote down in the agenda what they call it. So we're on to our next point, technically 7.5. And what it is I will put out, because we have a quorum of our board here, is our bylaws aren't, say we have to have voting the day of the annual meeting and 2 weeks prior. Well, given that we're in the times of COVID-19, and we have the issue, basically people will can have been able to call in and proxy vote. Trish Elder's been screening all those calls, so that way we actually know who's voting is voting. There's been no voter fraud, even with mail-in and call-in. But the other thing is also extend it so that way when we have services the next 2 weeks, people can vote in. That's the proposal right now. I, however, cannot move to do that, neither can I second it. So we do have members of the board here that I'm encouraging that if they want to consider allowing that they think about it. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Farrow and seconded by Ms. Johnston. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. So for the next 2 Sundays, we're going to allow you to vote either by calling in the church, look up that fccjcks.com, or use your phone book or whatever, call in the church, or stop by if you feel comfortable doing that, so that way you can vote. And we'll verify, make sure that you're a member, you're of age, and that way you can then vote regarding the deacons, deaconesses, elders, as well as the budget. So that way we have something going forward, because we're responsible. You know, we choose to be dumb enough to come up here and be responsible for the running of the church. When it comes to the money, when it comes to the physical part, when it comes to the spiritual part, is we take on that burden. Now, I say dumb because last 2 years I've been your chairman of the board. And so between the financial fund that we've been through and then COVID-19, I'm really looking forward to a point that somebody else steps up to be chairman. I've got a feeling that's not going to happen this year, but next year it might happen. To be honest, even through all these times, it's been a pleasure serving as the chairman, because it's a heck of a lot easier than it could have been. When we have financial issues, we have people that are able to look at the budget and crunch those numbers. It's great. And we have people stepping up to be able to do that. When we have staff that's willing to tackle those issues. When we have COVID-19 strike, the stay-at-home orders come down, how do we responsibly handle that? Which was handled right away. The elders, the staff, and myself discussed kind of where we're going with that and what plan of action to take. And use the congregation, make it easy. It may not always seem like I think you're making it easy for me, but you do. Because we've had the various times that you listen, you respond, you take part in it, and then you take ownership and you take action. You show your faith through your actions. So I want to thank you for that. At this time, I just want to make sure, since it is a meeting, even though there's no requirement for it, are there any questions or comments from the public or the congregation here? And I'm also seeing if there are any online thoughts as well, outside of Bill. All right, Ronnie? For those of you at home and abroad, Ronnie wanted to make sure to give a special thanks, given that we're streaming now, so that way even if we're not together, we're still together. Big thanks to Doug Bunch, as well as to Bill Doden for giving us technological ability, the hardware, the software, the Wi-Fi, the Ethernet, whatever it is, so that way we can connect and be able, so that way we're here and you're here with us. And so with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and then we can pray together. Now, whenever we have our monthly meetings, whoever moves to adjourn gets to pray. But this time, I'm going to pray us out. Will you bow with me? Dear Lord, thank you for us being able to gather here, whether physically or digitally. We thank you for the church that you've allowed us to be a part of here. I know it's a part of your greater church in this world, but it's the church here that we are a family with, day in, day out, Sunday and every other day of the week. And the various things that we do as we volunteer, as we give, as we make sacrifice to expand your kingdom, whether it's internal in somebody's heart or it's their souls, or it's physically, whether laying brick or anything else. We thank you for the opportunity to do this together, to serve together, and to love you together. In Christ's name, amen. Until next year.